Hello, my name is Doug and welcome to the video and welcome to HubSpot. Today we are going to be building together our very own lead score and a lead scoring mechanism. So let's first define what is lead scoring and why should you be using it if you are using HubSpot. So take a random sample of 100 contacts. How do you know who are the most engaged? Typically, what you may do is you may rank and order your contacts by those that have most recently engaged with a marketing email, maybe their last page visit date. But does that tell you if they have a history of engaging with your emails? Does it tell you if they have a history or positive history of looking at the right things? That's why we use a lead score. It is a numerical value. You can usually play around with the higher and lower limits of what number you want. But simply imagine you've got your contacts and then rather than 100 and you're just ordering them by last engaged, you can start to say, let's look at leads that have a score above 70, because you know that that means that they have been routinely opening emails, they've been positively engaging, and perhaps they have completed a form. What you'll then be able to do is create bands of high, medium, and low based on your scoring threshold. And this will operate dynamically and automatically in the background and will even decay over time. So to start with, in HubSpot, you want to make sure that you navigate to your lead scoring area. You can get to that by going to the marketing selection and navigating down to lead scoring. Or if you like to be a whiz and you use keyboards, on Mac, you can use Command K to open up the search and I'll type in lead scoring. And then I can go to my app for lead scoring, which will bring me here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from scratch, click that, and it's then going to bring you to this little modal or the sequence of modals. Because what you can do here is you can choose to score contacts, companies, or if you have the right package, you can use it to apply to deals as well. You then have three options. If we look at contacts, which is what we're going to do today, you have a combined score, an engagement score, and a fit score. Now, I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I tend to think that you distinguish between a lead score, which is behavioral and activity-based, and fit score, which will normally be your lead grade. So you can have an A-star lead, which is someone that they've got the right job title, they work at the right company, and they've got a phone number. They have data about them, which is immutable unless they change jobs. But generally, we say that in our CRM, the data is immutable data, unless we do data enrichment. And then you have your grade for that, so A, B, C, and D. And then lead score says, well, I've got some A grade leads, but they're not engaging very highly. So you might have some A's that are like 10, 20, maybe they're even 0. You know about them, they're the right lead, but they're just not engaging with you. That's where you can use your lead score. As HubSpot rightly points out, you can measure your contact's level of engagement and how they align to your ideal customer through a combined score. You then have your contact engagement score, which measures your contact's level of engagement based on their behavior and interactions, as we've discussed. And then your fit score, which how closely they align with your ideal customer based on demographics and other data. So we're just today going to look at contact engagement score. And again, it gives us some scenarios of how we might use this. So assign points to behaviors that show a contact's engagement with your product offering and readiness for sales. For example, visiting web pages, downloading resources, or marketing email opens. You can then nurture those leads or route to sales. So you keep a score for each contact to evaluate their level of interest and engagement. And you can use this score to build a more targeted marketing strategy with higher conversion rates. Perfect. So scenario is you're going to send an email out that has a very prominent call to action, and you want to maximize the people that you're sending it to. So you've got 100 contacts. You know that it's probably relevant for the majority of them, but you want to hit your KPIs and you want to make sure the right people are getting it. So you can then use that score to say, I only want to send to leads that are in our high bucket. So we've selected contact engagement. We're looking at our contacts. So now we're going to go and create our score. So what we're going to start by doing is we've got the usual HubSpot fluff at the top. We've got exit, save, so it will save automatically. We've got our label for our score. And it's important to know when you do this and you set it up, you're going to have two new properties. you're going to have a score, which is based on the name of this, which will be a number value, which you can use in your workflows and list segmentation. And you'll also have a secondary value, which is called threshold. So that would be based on the thresholds that we define. It will then be a pick list value that is set based on that score. To start with, what we're going to do is we're going to add event groups. So when I click add event group, I have this little modal here, which says new scoring group. So what I like to do is I like to think of all the common behaviors and then create groups for each of those behaviors. So that means we have better control on each group and we can better segment the behavior. So in a practical sense, you could use your group limit to apply. So for example, let's say you send an email out and for whatever reason, someone just keeps opening it and your score says it will increase by 1 for every email open. If they just keep spamming that open button and you don't apply a group limit, you're then going to suddenly be left with someone's got 200 points, but they're just spamming. It's not relevant. So what a group limit allows you to do is create a threshold that they can't exceed in that group. So we're going to call this one email interaction. And we then have this option called decay scores. So for example, let's take that person that engaged and opened lots of emails. They've opened 100 emails, but our limit is, let's say, 20. So they have a group limit on emails of 20. If we don't enable decayed scores, that will always remain 20 unless we have some negative score criteria that will decrease the score based on certain interactions. What decay score does, it will reduce that group score over an interval if nothing happens. So for example, we'll say that every month this will reduce by a rate of 50%. So they open 100 emails, capped at 20. After 1 month, presuming they have done nothing else, it will then reduce by 50%, bringing their score from 20 down to 10. And for the following month, it will go from 10 to 5 and so on. So let's start adding in event criteria. So you'll see here in this little drop down, I've got ads, calls, call to actions, documents, forms, integrations, intent signals. And what we're interested in for this category is marketing email. So now I'm going to say I want opened email. So every time they open an email, it will add 1 point. And I can say here that it can score every time or limit to, say, 5 points. So let's add 1 and it will limit to 5 points. So that will cap after 5 adjustments to their score. So what we can then do is we can apply a little bit of a filtering here. So we could say that it's going to filter based on, I don't know, email name. So we can look at specific emails or email name at send time. We can do, let's look at location state. So maybe you have emails from a certain location, but we're just going to remove that filter for now. And you'll also see timeframes and add frequency. Now, because we have our decay on, we can't use this feature. If I did that, I can then apply a time frame in the last 3 days, and I can add frequency is at least 2 times. So what this is telling us is, have they opened an email, any email, because we're not applying filters, in the last 3 days, and they have done this action at least 2 times. And for each of those positive criteria, it's going to add 1 point. So I'm going to remove this for now, this filtering. We're going to leave it nice and sane. So we've got a cap at 5, and we've got on this group a limit of 20. So we'll add 1, and we'll just do this score every time. So add 1 point for every time they open the email. But now what we can do is we can either add event criteria or we can add more events. So if you add criteria, it's going to show you basically the same options that you've got there. And if you add more events, you can choose from the other categories of options. So for now, I'm going to remain in our email group, and I'm going to say that they clicked a link in an email, which is very positive, and that's going to score them positively for 5 points. I'm just we're going to leave that there. That's fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and now say email bounced. So we've got 2 positive interactions here and 1 negative. You'll notice next to the points, we also have add and we have subtract. So because email bounce is a negative behavior, we're going to subtract. So I'm going to be very, very harsh here and reduce their score in this group by 20 points. So what's going to happen now is they may get, say, 1 point for an open, 5 for a click. But if we send another email and it bounces, their marketing email sub-score is going to decline, be subtracted by 10 points. So this is really useful to know because it ensures that when you're building these, that you have both a way to cap the score and a way to minimize negative behaviors. Because what a lot of people do here is they'll go, yeah, they opened an email, they clicked an email, and their score keeps going up and up and up. But what about if they do something negative? That is where we need to make sure that we are always providing a negative detractor so that our scores are a meaningful representation of positive interactions. And so we're going to take that further. We're going to bring our delayed score back in, and we'll keep our 50% reduction per month. So now let's see if there's any other criteria within our email grouping that we might want to use. Replied to email is a very common one. So replied to email, I'm going to give this 5 points again. That's a very intentional behavior. Maybe we'll do that a little bit more charitably and say 10 points. So our other options that we have for our events, update their email subscription status. So perhaps on this one, you want to say that if they unsubscribed is true, then again, subtract 20 points. We don't want to be emailing people that don't want to hear from us, of course. And we're now going to add event groups. So we've got our email interaction, which we can see here. And we might want to now think of our other categories of emails, which would be our let's say our sequences. So let's say we click on there and we say that they have been, they booked a meeting through a sequence. That's a really, really positive indicator. So we'll say that that one is a nice 20 points. But notice that it's very likely that they're exceeding our point threshold here already. So it's just worth keeping in mind. Now we're going to add another group, and we're going to call this one web behavior. So once again, we'll give this a limit. We'll give this one 50 for the purpose of this illustration. And it kindly tells us that we have 30 points remaining from our scoring bracket, which is currently set at 100 points. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into add event criteria, and I'm going to say web events. And I'm going to say that they have visited a page in the last 3 days, say 5 days. So anytime they visit the site within 5 days, it adds 1 point. Now, common page that people may visit is a recruitment page. So think of this in terms of your marketing and sales hat. Do we want someone that visits our landing page and our high value pages, or someone that just keeps going to job postings? So what I would recommend that you do is that you add in from your, let's just click out of that. From your event page visited, apply a filter where the URL may contain, for example, /jobs or /careers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 5 points. I mean, obviously we can do the inverse. If it's a landing page or a high value page, we could bolster those points for a high value page. But definitely think about the negative pages, the pages that may be communicating to us that they are not the right fit for us. They're not prospects, they are potential candidates at the company, at your company. So I can score these individually, separately, but for now we're just going to leave them as separate. So jobs, careers. There we go. We're not scoring individually, so score together. There we go, and subtract 5 points. So we've got our web behavior. Again, this one we can't decay because we've got a time horizon on our page visited. So keep that in mind. And now if I were to try and save, I can't do that now because what I need to do is save first, and then I can review. And this is where we're going to get interesting. So before we do that, we're going to click on contacts. So you can also only apply your score to certain contacts or specific contacts, which is very useful. A scenario for that would be perhaps you want to only score users in a particular target market where you know their country, or perhaps they have a certain criteria that you have defined. So you can use your segment to score those or exclude certain contacts. Apologies, I misspoke there. This is to exclude. So by default, it will include everyone, but you can exclude certain demographics. So apologies there, I misspoke. And then we'll go to settings. So this is where you can define that label. So this is behavior score. And then what we're going to do is go to thresholds. And this is where we've got our score thresholds. So call this behavioral score threshold. And as we said earlier, we've got our 3 buckets, high, medium, and low. And we can choose the ranges here. So we could say medium starts from 20 up to, let's say, 50. And anything from 50 to 100 points is high. So now when I save this, it's going to create this property for threshold, which I can then filter based on these. And I'm going to have my score value, which will be our number value for us. And what we can then do, if we're happy, is we can preview distribution. So it's going to take a look at our contacts database. And it's going to give you a quick summation of how that score may take effect. So this process will be determined by how large your CRM size is. So this one has 8,475 eligible contacts, and it's pulling a sample of just over 50% to 5,000. So we can see the average score for this particular CRM instance is 0. We have 2 medium, 0 high. So maybe our high threshold for these contacts is a little too aggressive, but we can use this to see our distribution of points and how that's working. So once we're ready, we can then test a contact just to see how that might look, and then review and turn on. So once that's done, it's then going to immediately apply any of those filtering to your existing contact database. So it's not going to apply just from now onwards. It's going to take your whole CRM, apply your filtering, and give an immediate breakdown of your score. And then once that's done, you'll then be able to come back to your lead scoring, and you'll be able to see your score that you've just made there. And you can then edit, clone, and delete. And you can have up to 5 lead scores active at any one time. And you can then filter based on what you are scoring, if it's a fit, engagement, or combined. And you can also filter on the status of each of those scores. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But until next time, I've been Doug, and ta-ra.